Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I will be recapping the movie 12 Years a Slave. The movie begins with a man named Solomon. He's a great violinist and famous in Saratoga Springs, New York. One day Solomon's friend introduced him to two magicians. They offered him a gig in Washington for 2 weeks with a reasonable salary. He accepted the offer and immediately appeared for the performance. It was a success, and to celebrate it he was invited to a dinner. On that occasion, Solomon drank quite a lot until he was unconscious. The next day, Solomon woke up and was shocked because his hands were tied. Shortly after, two men come to Solomon, but he says that he's a free man. But the two men did not believe him. They were convinced that Solomon was a slave and start beating him up. After that, another man approaches Solomon and orders him to change his clothes and smuggled Solomon and some other people in the night in a carriage. Later, he found out that he will be taken to a place where they traded slaves. He and the other slaves were then ordered to get on the ship. On the ship, there was a crew member who dragged a girl and was about to have sex with her. Another man tried to stop him, but all in vain. Solomon and the others were ordered to throw the man's dead body into the sea. Upon arrival at the port, they were presented to someone. Solomon tried to explain his real name, but he was instead slapped by the man. The slaves were told to clean themselves and get ready. The slave trade man named Ford came and decided to buy Solomon and Eliza. Sadly, Eliza had to part with her children. Solomon changed his name to Platt and started working at Mr. Ford's place. Being a new guy, he was scolded by Beats, the head worker in that place. Beats didn't want anyone better than him and hates seeing someone stand out. Mr. Ford and some slaves went to the forest to cut down wood, but he was confused about how to efficiently bring all the wood, whether by land or the river. Platt gave his idea to tie all the woods like a canoe and let them wash away by the river, but Beats mocked the idea. Mr. Ford then gave Platt the chance to show his idea, which worked. He received praise from Mr. Ford and the other slaves except for Beats. Even Mr. Ford gave him a violin as a gift for his bright idea. One day Platt was given the task to make a hut. Not liking how he stood out from the other slaves, Beats came and started to beat him. Solomon fought back and injured Beats. A guy named Chapin broke up the fight and let Beats run away. Soon after, Beats came again, hung Solomon on a tree. Luckily, Chapin came back and threatened them all to cut off the fight, or else they would have to pay for their life. Unfortunately for Platt, he was left behind hanged on a tree. He kept his foot on the ground to lift his body, preventing him from getting hanged to death. In the afternoon, Mr. Ford immediately saved Platt and brought him home. Mr. Ford said that this place was not safe for him, and he would move Solomon to a place that belonged to someone named Mr. Epps. Mr. Epps was known for his cruelty to all his slaves. Their Platt was assigned to a cotton plantation. In that place, there was this female slave called Patsy who was good at cotton collection, which made her Mr. Epps's favorite slave. One night, Mr. Epps woke up all the slaves and ordered them to dance for him. Mr. Epps's wife suddenly threw a flower vase on Patsy because she was jealous, as Epps treated Patsy as his favorite. Epps refused the idea of selling Patsy, making her even angrier. One day, Epps's wife called Platt and ordered him to go buy something for her. She asked where he came from and whether he can read and write or not. Platt replied saying he was from Washington and he could not read or write. On his way to the market, the idea to run away flashed in his mind, but he then met with two landlords who were about to hang their slaves. One of the landlords saw Platt and asked him about his master and what he was doing there. Frightened, Platt said his master was Mr. Epps and he was told to go to the market. Hearing that, the men let him go. In the evening, Mr. Epps came to Patsy's room and raped her. The next day, Mr. Epps ordered Platt to go shopping again. Platt saw the roll of paper that Mr. Epps had left and stole one sheet of paper and tucked it in his sleeve. In the evening, the slaves were ordered to dance again. Even Mr. Epps handed over food to all slaves except for Patsy. Frustrated, she then injured Patsy. Afterwards, she asked Platt to kill her because she felt her life was useless. Sometime later, the cotton fields were invaded by pests. This caused Mr. Epps to rent his slaves to Judge Turner. Before letting his slaves go, Mr. Epps told them not to tell Judge Turner about his behavior. At Judge Turner's place, the slaves were assigned the job at the sugarcane plantation. They were better there because Judge Turner turned out to be a good landlord to his slaves. Their Platt got praise from his master for his agile performance. One day, Judge Turner found out that Platt was proficient in playing the violin, so he offered a job to Platt. He gladly accepted the job, but before going, he took the time to carve his wife's and children's names on the violin. The pest outbreak in the cotton fields was finally over. This required the slaves to return to Mr. Epps' place. There, a new slave named Armsby, a white man who was forced to become a slave, was seen. One night, Platt visited Armsby and they chatted with each other. Armsby told Platt that he was fired from work and chose to be a slave just to survive. Feeling he can trust Armsby, Platt then asked him to send a letter to New York. Armsby agreed to help him. Platt then wrote a letter with a paper taken some years ago using berries as ink and a twig shaped like a pencil. A few days later, Mr. Epps found out about the letter, but Platt denied it. He was then forced to burn the letter. Later, when the slaves were carrying out their activities, one of them suddenly fainted and died. They felt sad about it, not because they were a family, but because they had suffered together for many years, so they considered themselves brothers. Years later, Mr. Epps wanted to build a house. He then called a construction expert from Canada named Bass. Bass chatted with Epps, and he was surprised by the practice of slavery in America. He considered that it was a bad thing and violated people's rights and freedom. One day, Mr. Epps was looking for Patsy. He asked everyone angrily, but nobody knew where she was. Soon after, Patsy came and tried to explain that she went to Mr. Shaw's house to ask for soap, but Mr. Epps ignored it. Mr. Epps then came and used the opportunity to frame Patsy because she was jealous of her. Mr. Epps then ordered the other slaves to strip her and ordered Platt to whip her. Platt pitied Patsy, and so he tried to whip weakly. Mr. Epps threatened him with a gun to whip harder. Mr. Epps started whipping her violently. Looking at how seriously injured Patsy was, Platt felt the guilty and destroyed the violin he got from Mr. Ford. Sometime after the incident, Platt met Bass and told him that he was named Solomon and was an independent man who came from New York. Listening to this, Bass was shocked, and then Platt asked Bass for help to write and send a letter to his friend named Parker about him. Bass decided to help Platt out. A few years later, a sheriff suddenly visited when Platt was working in the field. The sheriff asked who was the person who came with him, and Platt confidently said that it was his old friend Parker. The sheriff also asked him about his real name and his family. After all the questions were answered, Platt finally hugged his friend after 12 years of not seeing him. Mr. Epps was not happy and tried to stop those people from taking Platt away, but the sheriff threatened that he would arrest Mr. Epps because Platt was a free man. Just before leaving, Patsy appeared in front of Platt and hugged him. Upon arrival, Platt changed his name back to Solomon. He was shocked to see his family's condition. He looked at a strange face in the family, and his already grown-up daughter said that it was her husband. She also said that she had given birth to a child, named just like her father Solomon. In the end, it was discovered that Solomon was one of the victims of the human trafficking syndicate. Solomon did not stay silent. He took the traffickers to court, however, because of the racial discrimination in America. His efforts to prosecute the traffickers failed. Then he wrote a book containing 12 years of experience of being enslaved and became an activist in the movement to abolish slavery in America. That's it for today. Like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.